distinguished guests, Chairman, Board Directors of the Gamini Korea Foundation, Session Chair, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here this afternoon for the session done by Dinesh Satrukar Singh on digital transformation and unlocking the future. In today's session chair will be Professor Ajit Maduraperuma, Senior Lecturer and former Founding Director, Industry Liaison Center, former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Open University of Sri Lanka. The panelists will be Samir Jayawardhan, Associate Chief Digital Economic Officer, Abbas Kamruddin, Managing Director, Deba Group of Companies, Lasita Devendra, CEO, Gamini Korea Foundation, Roshan Rasool, Executive Director, SoftLogic Holdings PLC. Before we commence today's proceedings, I would like to play a small introductory video about the Gamini Korea Foundation and its project, the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum.
The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, is an initiative of the Gamini Korea Foundation aimed at meaningfully contributing towards resolving the complex economic issues confronting the country today. The Gamini Korea Foundation was founded to take forward the passion of Dr. Gamini Korea to achieve just and equitable economic development in all countries. The late Dr. Gamini Korea was an internationally renowned Sri Lankan economist and an outstanding product of the universities of Cambridge and Oxford. Born on the 4th of November 1925 to Dr. C.V.S. Korea and Freda Korea, sister of Sir John Kotalavala, the then Prime Minister of Ceylon. Dr. Gamini Korea's grandfather and granduncle were the famous freedom fighters from Chiloe, Victor Korea, who was a member of the Legislative Council of Ceylon, and Charles Korea. His uncle, Sir Claude Korea, was at the forefront of Sri Lanka's entry onto the world stage at the independence and for many years thereafter. Gamini Korea was educated at the Royal College Colombo, after which he started his higher education at the University of Ceylon in 1944, before going to study at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge, and Nuffield College, Oxford from 1945 to 52. There he obtained 2 BAs and MAs from the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge and a DPhil from University of Oxford. He was the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate in economics. He was also the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate from Oxford University in any subject. He was a key member of the Planning Committee for Sri Lanka's first 10-year plan, 1959, which sought to raise economic growth and reduce poverty. Among his numerous achievements was his appointment as the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, where he negotiated the terms of the Lome Convention, a landmark agreement providing development and access to European markets to Africa and the Caribbean. He was an early proponent of the equitable development who worked tirelessly for trade and development in developing countries. The Gamini Korea Foundation provides opportunities for meaningful economic engagement through rigorous multidisciplinary research to promote inclusive and sustainable development. The Gamini Korea Foundation, an autonomous non-profit institution, is committed to making a real and lasting difference in the lives of vulnerable people. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, has been conceptualized by Gamini Korea Foundation to bring about change and infuse innovation into the processes of democratic governance and sustainable economic development. It aims to pursue in-depth research and dialogue, focusing on core sectors that need to be addressed and suggest innovative, results-oriented policy strategies to resolve the current economic crisis. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum will bring together the like-minded thought leaders and industry stakeholders to discuss, debate and agree on pressing issues in a variety of sectors and devise alternative, sustainable economic models, processes and practices. A group of thought leaders who are also subject experts have been assigned to review the issues papers and provide necessary guidance and relevant research material to the respective authors. SLIF will transcend boundaries and barriers and invite specialists from all over the world to contribute their expert views and knowledge to enable Sri Lanka to face its current challenges effectively. 20 identified sectors have been assigned to experts to research and write issues papers on contemporary issues which have an impact on socio-economic development. The discourse will commence with questions that should be raised on good governance and administrative reforms. The other topics are tourism, export-oriented industrial development, macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, reforming Sri Lanka's state-oriented enterprises, Sri Lanka's electricity and petroleum industry, Sri Lankan food crops, livestock and fisheries, transportation and highways, education, healthcare, shipping and logistics, international trade and investment, subnational policies, environment, women and development, ethnicity and socio-economic development, information technology, and foreign policy. The outcome of these issues papers forms a blueprint to be presented to policymakers as a landmark contribution from the Gamini Korea Foundation towards strengthening the economic recovery of Sri Lanka. You are invited to join the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum by logging on to the Gamini Korea website. Fill in the registration form, choose an area of expertise where you would like to share your knowledge, advice and comments on the issues papers posted under each thematic area. Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, beyond the barriers of tradition.
I would now like to invite our Deputy Chairman, Dr. Harsha Athrupana, to deliver the welcome speech.
Thank you, Sohan. Good evening to all of the participants at this very important session. You have just seen a video which explains the Gamini Korea Foundation and also the work that we have been doing. Today we have the presentation of, I think, the 15th paper in the series of 20 papers on a very important topic, increasingly so in this world of the fourth industrial revolution, IT. And the papers that have been presented before, almost all of them have been placed on our website, in the Gamini Korea Foundation website. You're welcome to access those papers and read them. And we look forward to the presentation today. And after that, we will have a discussion with our panelists. Then the session will be open to the public for any questions, queries that you have. And the paper will then be uploaded on the website. And we look forward to an interesting and informative session. So can I invite the panelists, the chairperson and the panelists to come up? Oh no, maybe wait now till the session is over because you will want to see the PowerPoint. So I'll invite our speaker to come over and then deliver his address, and then we'll move on to the next session. Thank you. Come.
Thank you, Dr. Harsha Athrupana, Deputy Chairman, Gamini Korea Foundation, Chairman Dr. Lloyd Fernando, CEO Lasita Devendra, Gamini Korea Foundation, and Sohan from Gamini Korea Foundation. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and eminent panelists, Chairperson Dr. Professor Ajit Madhuraperuma as well. Before I start, let me just give some preclusions basically. My observations basically and the presentation made here is not going to be the replica of the paper which I've already shared or written, because I believe it was circularized amongst all of you all. So I didn't want to make a repertoire of a presentation of what I had put there on paper. So a lot of the in-depth criterion is contained on the paper itself. I'm just going to kind of summarize basically at a very high level, macro level, plus move it into a different game plane itself with regard to a practical way forward for Sri Lanka, which is ailing. So I believe that should be our focus rather than just having like research insights on papers. So that being said, I also wish to highlight that I've been in industry for near 3 decades, basically in the closest being in the IT industry, being an IT professional as well, engineer as well, plus also donning the mantle of very many other brand marketing, HR, etc. So this is my personal professional view perspective, and it does not represent any organization which I have been associated with or am associated with at present. It's my view perspective being an IT professional in industry out there with regard to what my deliberation is encompassing here. With having said that, let me move on to my presentation. I title it, basically the title given basically from the Gamini Korea Foundation was Information Technology. I just want to kind of turn it around. We're living in a digital era. So basically, I want to kind of look at the digital transformation agenda here and how we can, as Sri Lankans, unlock its potential for the betterment of our nation. So since the topic given was IT, I also want to make this convergence, I think, which all of you all know. Communications has come close hand in glove with IT, so it's ICT, and basically take it on from there. Sectoral view perspective, I'm not going to dwell on what I've put here on the slides, but within my paper, I've just highlighted, we're looking at a perspective of 2022-23, basically. And the scenario, most of you all would have observed basically the instability we had in the political, economical, social, and all the challenges which we had, and basically the underlying balance of payment crisis, right? That even tenanted to the IT industry very heavily, where I think there was a slap bang on the lot of the HS codes pertaining to IT were constrained, and no one could even bring laptops, computers. So we are talking about IT, we are talking about digitalization, but this is what the resultant, which was the resultant impact which hit the IT industry. Many industry bodies lobbied towards getting these revoked, but there was no consultation process. So this kind of caused a dent, and to overcome this dent, it takes some time basically for the revival to happen, because there was a kind of a bit of a backlog in the situation. So as a result, I think there was only modest growth, and the positive sides, basically this is coming again, not from me, but a research analyst organization based in the UK. They've analyzed this across the market, basically Fitch Solutions country risk industry, and they have presented these facts. Moving on, basically comparatively, they see 2017 to 2021, it was robust, and there was kind of more agility. From the survey conducted by UNCTAD and ICTA, basically there was this $1.7 billion indicated basically as the export revenue basically for the ICT industry, which was speculated, and that contributed or attributed to 4.4% of GDP, but nowhere near the mark of other developing nations who are in the range of 15%, plus also developed countries which are in the range of 30%. So it's very mediocre in that context. Also, there's a bit of challenge on basically the statistics that come through, because there are a lot of organizations that you very well know who look at very competitive markets to do their business, and only some of their operations are happening in Sri Lanka. So a lot of their funds basically, or the revenues are not recorded in country, which is a grievous problem basically. So I don't really want to dwell on too much of statistics as well, because statistics is just a baseline and a figure, but we need to figure out where we are. So the key message is we are very much under the line itself, as it were. If you're looking at the 15% and the 4.4%, we're very much below. Sectoral, again, there's a depiction of the variance basically, how the adoption was, and the bottom line message here is there's a lot of catch up to take place. So the recovery is supposed to be at the end of this year, moving on to the next year, where they anticipate the recovery for the IT sector to take on. So I think I've touched a lot on the macroeconomic perspective with regard to where we are with regard to the IT sector. Nothing much to boast of. There are a lot of other statistics which I think I put in the paper as well with regard to the problems, situations which arose as a result. We had basically, we had the fuel crisis, which a lot of the IT companies were reliant on basically the power supply for their operations, which were impeded. So a lot of companies even pulled out of Sri Lanka, looking at more lucrative destinations overseas. Then in addition to that, we had the taxation scheme that hit in. Basically, it hit more of the IT professionals, because the IT professionals, once graduated, start at a bit of an upper spectrum, and they are most often, even at the entry levels, subject to tax. So a lot of the talent pool, basically, that you see, there's a lot of brain drain experience within the industry circuit, which circumvented the move forward of the IT industry. It is happening even now, basically, and for very many reasons: quality of life, and the other thing is taxation, cost of living, very many things. So families are migrating wholesale in search of greener pastures for their children. So that is impacting the ICT sector to a great extent. So what I believe is we need to change the game planner and look at a transformative agenda rather, basically rather than looking at the NAVE, ICT and IT, and how digital readiness, agility, and basically transformation could be brought about, because I don't think it is anymore an option. It is a bare necessity for Sri Lanka to adapt and join the bandwagon, lest be left behind. So it involves the integration of all digital technologies. You have the spectrum of digital technologies, which I'll enumerate basically, which are very well known to you all as well, because I believe the end user is more basically aware of what's happening out there, right? With ChatGPT and all these things, you all are more aware basically, and there is no confinement. And also ICT itself cannot be really confined to a sectoral perspective, because it's all pervasive. And it's all over, it's within every industry circuit. I was just listening to the, I think you all had the shipping, paper presented, I think last time. And a lot of the thing tenanted around digitalization and the manual basically work effort which goes on, and it was all tenanting around IT. The conversation was around that. Yes, they did have the context of the hub status and where we are and all that stuff, but the salient point there was, the missing element was, where is automation? Where is digitalization? Why are we yet with all these documents to clear things, etc., right? So it involves us being cognizant and leveraging on the digital tools, technologies, and processes to enhance performance and efficiency. But having said this, I wish to also reiterate and highlight, technology is just only probably about 20-25% of it. The cultural transformation is the key thing there. So if you were to just take rough percentages, I think there'll be a percentage of 50% of the cultural transformation want to adapt and want to do this, basically, from that perspective, to create this digital transformation. So it's not purely a technocrat or technology game planner there. So it's about changing the culture, the way we think, having that digital mindset, etc., to take it forward. Plus the remaining rest, another 20% would be around the re-engineering, adaptability and re-engineering of your current processes. So what are the key drivers for digital transformation? Why do we need to transform ourselves? It's the obvious that rapid technology advances which are taking place globally, and no more is it like Sri Lanka, and basically we are all we live in a global village, right? So basically to stay competitive in the global village with all the competitive pressures around that, and also the change of consumer expectations. The consumer is more aware of what's out there, and the expectations are way high. So for a lot of you all in the corporate circuit, delighting a customer, having that wow factor is a subjective thing now, because the baseline keeps increasing. So you need to be at the helm as well to provision it. And the only way you can do it is using digital technologies and looking at a digital transformation paradigm, basically, within your organizations. A rough framework, basically, just to fulfill, basically, the need. There are many facets that you can look at in the framework. So you're looking at a technology integration perspective, looking at the adoption of emerging technologies, the AI, the IoTs, blockchain, etc., into the value chain. Process optimization, as I mentioned, which is very key. It's re-engineering and optimizing. It's not automation of your existing traditional processes, but it's looking at the re-engineering perspective, looking at the lean ways of doing things, right, which you need to bring. And then the customer experience enhancement. Service delivery is another key facet that even nowadays, a lot of organizations, I think you all also experience it, I also have experienced it, a lot of companies, be it the banks we deal with, be it a lot of the other organizations who are talking about automation, there's a missing link is the customer experience. They look at, making it seamless, but they don't take too much of heed of the experience factor of the customer or consult the customer thereafter. Right, so I think it's a very pivotal facet that needs to be looked at. Plus also the personalization. Beyond the customer experience, everyone wants to be kind of treated as an individual and be personalized reach out. So that too needs to be done. And it's not difficult with basically data now. Data becomes the common fabric or the common element out there. So with a data-driven decision making, you can basically look at these facets and how you can do it. As I mentioned earlier, requires a cultural mindset. Requires you to be with that digital mindset, else you're not going to kind of transform anything in this country for that matter, or across your organization, if you're going to stick to your traditional method of doing things. Collaboration, connectivity is also key. Co-petition, collaboration, all that is key to make a success of the digital transformation model. Here, what I'm talking about is you don't do it on your own. You look at private-public partnerships, etc. Look at the strengths of each other and try to see how you can work in an ecosystem, one single ecosystem, where you can leverage in on the inner strengths of each other. It's not a game of you winning a race kind of thing. It's the nation going forward. So you need to look at it, given a lot of the other circumventing things around. Security compliance. Looking at digital technologies, with that comes, you have the pros and cons. So you have the vulnerabilities, exposures, which people, it's another business in its own, basically. So you need to have security and compliance to ensure that your digital assets, because you're going on the digital paradigm, you need to ensure that all your digital assets are safeguarded. Agility and flexibility. Again, from a traditional, if I were to relate from a project perspective, if you're looking at a traditional development of a project and delivery of a project, gone are the days that what they call the waterfall method, let me not get too technical, is gone by. You need to be agile, basically. It's sprint-based development and more customer experiential kind of development. Even in your organizations, if you're doing it for a certain unit, you probably do it on a collaborative basis. And you have certain releases out there. Basically, you can call it Scrum, you can call it Agile, whatever, so that you meet up with the end requirement of the customer. So the similar context where you have collaborative approaches with your customers when you deploy systems out there, so that basically you get their inputs and feedback right at the beginning, rather than end up with a product which is of no use. Moving on, these are some of the technologies which I've already spelled out and which is well known to you. IoT, AI, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, data analytics, blockchain, robotics, AR, VR, etc. Why digital transformation? You need to basically improve your efficiency, enhance your customer experience, as I mentioned earlier, and increase that innovation mindset within your organizations or across the nation, as it were, to help in better decision making and having a competitive edge, be it locally or globally. All of this would help fuel towards a digital economy. I've not talked about figures and digital economy per se, because there is another, basically, I mean, in the market, there are very many organizations who went out there with, we need to have the digital economy of this in this, or we need to have our software exports, be it 1 billion, 5 billion, 4 million, but the goalposts keep changing. So rather, I believe it's a proactive approach we need to take, rather than say, okay, it's good to have a target and go towards your target. But rather than having a quantifiable target of that nature, I think it's best to have basically certain of the basic fundamentals in place, which you need to put in place and get in place, rather than going behind figures. That's my perspective. You can disagree with me, but that's my perspective. Just a bit of from a global insider, I think I think China is only looking at basically data, that fabric, basically, and based on data itself, it's a forecast. Again, another research organization is contributing this out. They're supposed to come out at the top, basically, because on the digital economy in this as a result of data, and that is going to help fuel their overall economy per se. What are the challenges when you try to have digital transformation? I think a lot of you all may have experienced it even in your corporate circuit. We may experience it nationally at very many points. Resistance to change, right? So that is one fundamental thing which we need to be cognizant of and have mechanisms to address. So it's the cultural perspective again. Right, we are talking about the HR, human, cultural perspective, right? Be it the citizen or be it the organization employee. How you onboard them and how you get them on your side. Next, the cybersecurity concerns, which I highlighted, because you're going digital. So there are vulnerabilities which you need to have preempt steps to safeguard against. Skills gaps. That's again another prevalent topic. I've written a lot on the paper, so I won't enumerate, but at a very high level, if you're looking at from ICT sector, They keep saying we need 20,000 ICT graduates in industry year on year, but we bring out only 9,000 from the universities, so there's a delta. Then in addition, we have people leaving overseas for greener pastures. What do we do about it? Kind of scenario, right? A lot of companies are looking at models beyond that. They're looking at remote working from wherever, to get the job done. It's not no more, I think with COVID and all this new norm of working, the traditional office culture of working from an office has broken down to a great extent, and some of the private companies are yet following that, where basically wherever you work from, as long as you are connected with the company and you deliver what they want, job gets done. So necessarily, I think even some local companies are looking at overseas resources in that context. Initially, there was this dilemma of how do we bring export, be it from Bangladesh or be it from India, how do we bring labor, what is the visa process? But no more are those challenges prevalent with IT, because IT, all you need is an internet connection and a laptop or a computer for that matter. So wherever you sit, you can work, right? And you don't need to also get the congregation from across the country, be it from Kandy, Jaffna, to commute here. You can have remote centers basically and look at distilling your work out there wherever you have the capacity and competency. Integration challenges, that's another element which I believe a lot of organizations have had, having legacy systems for whatever very many reasons, and with standards not being open. So I think a lot of organizations have gone through this pain, but to a great extent, organizations are looking at basically having enterprise service buses, web services, very many other things to enhance the integratability and overcome the challenge to a certain extent. Because otherwise you have A system not talking to B system, so you have standalone systems. Nationally, you can talk about the same thing. You can have islands of automation around the country which are not integrated, which causes a citizen an issue. Right. For each kind of requirement, you go and give your information. There is no centralized mechanism of coordinating all that. So had you an integrated whole, yes, you could have. So to be very fair, I think standards have evolved with time. So I think best foot forward, not looking at the past. We need to ensure that whatever we put in place has all these facets looked into. Another salient point, this is again from ensuring that your digital transformation, be it projects or endeavors within organizations or be it even at a national level, succeed, you need to have the proper leadership. And if you're looking at national perspective, you need to have the correct political will, basically at the correct point, and basically the vision and purpose. Then you need to have your employees, or even if you're looking at the national perspective, your stakeholders engaged within that fulcrum. You need to have your strategy, and again, as I mentioned, you need to have an iterative implementation plan, because you need to be under the skin of your customer or your citizen and know the likes, dislikes, be able to change course correction, etc., to be more agile. Monitoring and evaluation plays a key role. And again, it needs to be more outcome, impact-based to figure out what you're delivering out there is gaining the required impact or outcome in terms of satisfaction or delight. Else you will have a system which has been deployed and no one is using it, for that matter, again, from an IT context. So from a mantra for success, I believe basically user centricity is very key, and commitment from the leadership, be it whatever. If it's from a national, basically I'm looking at the political will, having the correct political will, unwavering as well, unwavering, and basically, and from a user centricity perspective, you're under the skin of be it your employee or client or your citizen, so that you know the likes, dislikes, and you are able to course correct and change to make it more usable and the adoption seamless. So again, it revolves around culture. I'm using culture a lot because I think technology can do wonders. Yes, it can. Technology can, but lot miss out the fact of culture and the role it plays. So I basically want to do a more deep dive. So I want to kind of take it into a forward path. Past is past. I want to look at a forward path of how we take Sri Lanka forward, right? we can emulate this to your organizations as well. So, but I'm just looking at pitching it at a national level because I'm not sure of what your companies are, what the representation of the audience is here, whom you represent, what companies you represent. But I'm just trying to pitch because, I mean, from a national perspective, it touches us all, right? We are all citizens of Sri Lanka. Mind you, there may be dual citizens, there may be people who are having one foot here, one foot there, but I'm just going with the vast majority that we are all citizens here, and our common interest is a national endeavor. So I believe instituting basically, and also this is not done in any sequential order. You may debate saying we need to have policy before setting up a body, right? But it's not done in a sequential manner, but it's sometimes it can be worked in parallel. Plus, basically, I'm just looking at certain facets. You need to have a concerted policy for the country with regard to digital transformation, which I believe is a lacking element. And when I say country, I'm not isolating it purely to public services, because I'm looking at this collaborative model where industry, business, and basically government all come together so that we thrive as a nation. I think these barriers need to be broken, especially given the situation. As you know, a lot of state enterprises have challenges with regard to budgets, things like that, right? And although they have good intentions, a lot of those are not realizable given these budgetary constraints. But that is where I think the hidden the power of the private sector companies who can come collaborate and partner with them on a model basically to make it happen for our nation. You can look at very many options basically. So you may challenge me and ask, so what is it for the private sector company? You can always have services models, revenue share models, etc. basically adopted, but our entire framework, governance framework, has to permeate and help and enable that. You need to cut down on a lot of the bureaucracy. So we need to have a concerted policy. So my policy basically endorses the entire spectrum of the nation, which is that ecosystem itself. Public, private, basically businesses all together. And then you need to have someone to drive it. So that's a reason I've said you need to have an apex body to drive this. And given the experience we've seen basically in country, which I've experienced as well earlier and very many times, basically we need to have this at the highest. Looking at the Singaporean, looking at the Malaysian example, basically of their successes, which have resonated, basically it has been positioned at the highest level so that there is this breakaway and the divide, right? Because I'm looking at from an adoption perspective, getting the message across and getting it done. And why I say authority, basically you need to have that regulatory role. It's not an option, right? It's a necessity. Holistic charter and a mandate for whatever the organization. I've just, basically the other point I forgot to tell you was I subscribed this paper, I think early part of this year. And I think it has been almost a year since basically I think we've taken it up. So we did a couple of revises, but I have not gone to a radical extent of changing things. But I believe, so the name I've used is in context with the digital transformation agenda. It can be whatever, X, Y, Z, right? It matters not, but I believe the empowerment needs to be there for the organization. Holistic charter mandate basically has to be there. And also above all, the last point, the point before you come into policy is the stakeholder consultation. That is very key. You don't do it behind closed doors. You involve everyone, basically. And I think it's a good insight again, Gamini Korea Foundation again. I think I had a research paper contributed. You all are opening it up for public deliberation. You all circularized it across so people can critique. They can give me their first-hand feedback, right? I mean, I can agree, disagree. We can discuss, try to see how we can model this to the next level so as to make it basically something really practically implementable in our country beyond the paper to basically practice. So that plays a very key role, the stakeholder consultation, bringing all quarters basically of be it public, private, industry, academia, consultants, consultations, etc. Then also a steering committee, basically. A task force needs to be appointed with the right skills and acumen. We should break away from affiliations, what is in it for us syndrome, and basically we should really be, conscious with our heart and basically look at really where people who could contribute and bring those people into the fulcrum to be part of the steering group or maybe groups for that matter, and basically see how we can, that national impinging need needs to come through. So we need to break away from this perspective of what is in it for me kind of individual, but what is in it for us kind of thing. We need to really drive that course. Also, then you need a driver in the seat. You need a champion, basically, who can take this through. I've looked at basically, I mean, you have a lot of global insights, and I think Gamini Korea Foundation also was very grateful. Dr. Lloyd, I got a copy of e-governance, whatever initiatives, digitalization. Basically, I just skimmed through it and gave it back. Estonia to very many other countries with what they've done. Basically, I think there are a lot of learned lessons for us. And it tenants around this. I mean, there has been, in all those instances, there has been a driver, basically, who has taken it forward. You can call it whatever, right? You can call it government, chief digital officer, you can call it whatever, right? It matters not. But someone who has a conviction, passion, acumen, capability to go the whole 9 yards, and who is committed to the cause and accountable to the nation. So that is a very key imperative if you look at the success as enumerated in that book with regard to, be it in the Middle East, be it in Canada, be it in, I think, very many countries. So that is the common thread. Then basically you need to strategize and draw action plans basically based on national priorities again. You can't do everything. So you, again, Pareto principle prevails, 80-20. You need to see the impactful and try to stagger it and do it across. And as I mentioned again, ecosystem for investors, partners, etc. to come together and collaborate to make it happen. Because a lot of these things, I've been basically, even my early days in the 90s, when I was at IBM basically, we've been talking about a lot of policy. You call it e-government policy, you may call it this policy, that policy, done by very many organizations, but then it results in a bound, maybe a dossier sitting somewhere, not implementable. So it's almost 30 years, right? So where are we? So I think we need to question ourselves, where are we, right? And try to see how we can move this ecosystem where we can bring all these parties together. Because obviously there are a lot of financial constraints, etc. But I'm sure basically there will be a lot of organizations willing to chip in from a national perspective to make it happen for Sri Lanka. I think cultural conditioning I've already spoken about, which would help in basically adoption, plus also the level of digital literacy. Some of the pushback you get in a lot of the organizations basically is with regard to the lack of digital literacy. So you need to address that. Not that you ignore it, you need to address it accordingly and try to see how you can upskill, reskill people basically for the purpose. So that you make it more inclusive. The bottom line is to make it inclusive and not to say like, look, this is the, I mean, if you're going on the trajectory of the generations, right, the millennials to the Gen Zs to whatever, it's not a Gen Z driven thing, it's like for all basically. So you need to be equitable, inclusive, and you need to be cognizant of that and adopt mechanisms to enhance the digital literacy. Planning implementations, I spoke about it again, be it done on an agile sprint mode so that you get the feel for where you're heading, where course correction could be necessitated rather than wait till the end when it's too late. So where you could adjust, course correct. And the other vital element is setting up a project management office to manage this end-to-end, having dashboards, and these dashboards should be prevalent. If you're looking at the analogy of maybe your company, all your departments are privy to what's happening, basically based on who is driving the digital course within your organizations. If it's at a national level, where all citizens basically are privy to what's happening. It's taxpayers' revenue on another perspective, right? So you're putting into action. So you need to figure out basically where we stand, where are the goalposts, where things are. It should not be, secluded to certain audiences. I hope I'm not being too radical here, but I believe these are the shortfalls that we have and which we have observed. So I'm trying to put this across. Hopefully it would get attention so that there is some sort of a course correction remedial. Then reviewing progress, impacts and outcomes again on an ongoing basis. So it's not a case of having measures of KPIs and achievements, but rather the impact, the downstream impact, and basically the outcomes derived, which should be looked at. Again, you need to record and celebrate this success, because there has to be something for whoever's basically. So from a citizen perspective, national perspective, it should be something boastful if we ever achieve something. And I'm looking at a forward step as well. We need to look at productizing. There are certain successes we have, scatter successes, but those scatter successes are limited to, I won't mention examples, but scatter successes are limited to that sphere. But it could be replicated across. if productized. So you need to have that productized mindset to take your success across certain other areas or spheres. So it will cut down on your reinvention on the wheel, and you can use that same effort to, engage or leverage in on. And also another forward path. You can look at these from an intellectual property perspective and gains, and come about with products that you could probably exploit for commercial gains once you get your act together at national level or at your organization level. Just don't be satisfied with that. Take it forward. See how you can productize it. See how you can create a product with it. It may be something that you develop for your internal organization fulfillment, but see how you can create a revenue stream out of that to take it forward. From a national perspective, same story. See how you can take that product out. I think there are a lot of organizations who have not implemented here locally first, but have gone and implemented solutions in other overseas destinations, which have been proven successful. So we need to break down again the barrier of, we need to have that concept of valuing what we have locally, have like that Bilanka concept, have that value what you have locally rather than looking at overseas options. There should be equitable plane for the local solutions, because that's where we can garner some commercial gains down the line. Again, this is very naive, but people who are connecting with basically coming from software engineering background, you recall the OSI, Open Systems Integrated Model with regard to the mapping. So it's not rocket science here. What I believe is the fundamental is having the physical infrastructure connectivity in place, basically in an integrated manner, right? So if you're talking about government, how do we integrate? If you're talking about data, if you're going into, this is a bit technical, so bear with me. Basically, if you're looking at data, how you're having your databases all integrated, so that you're not having islands of automation, but you're having an integrated whole where you can leverage in on. Then basically applications, same goes with applications. The end ideal is to have one country portal basically for customers. Organizations, you can have the similar analogy where you have one portal basically for your organization, and you can model it on this premise. So it's not rocket science. I do understand a lot of people from time to time, they look at various experiences, be it Estonia, be it India, wherever, what they've done, and they think it's rocket science, we need to adapt. I don't think so. Just go back into your fundamentals and see what is the missing link. From organization perspective, you have silos of automated systems. How do you integrate and couple them together? Similarly, databases. So this is technical, right? Going back into databases, how do you design? How do you integrate? Basically, looking at multitude of systems so that you create. I'm looking again the user centricity again. You as a customer or a citizen, you go to one point and you want to really get something done where you don't need to replicate giving your information out, basically, so where it's all integrated as a whole. And obviously, I think there's been a lot of talk, debate, a lot of countries have done it as well, where you have a unique digital ID. We have a national ID, but you're talking about a digital ID, right? So basically where you then as a citizen, a unique citizen, you are able to validate and get your services. These are basically future trends. Basically some are future, but some are already prevalent, basically depending on which you're into, which also would aid in the cause from a technology perspective, given that this is IT sectoral perspective or narrative. That's all I have for you, basically. So again, to sum up, my idea is not to dwell too much on the past and be very critical of where we stand and, demean ourselves, but be more futuristic, future-oriented, try to see how we can take our country forward as one. You all may have your insights with regard to how you need to take your organization, but I'm pitching as a citizen because the common element we all thread is being a citizen of Sri Lanka, which we are proud of. So we need to see how we can take it forward. Thank you for your patient listening. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dinesh. Without further ado, let's start our panel discussion. I would like to invite the panel session chair, Professor Ajit Madhurapeluma, to please take his seat as session chair. And Dinesh, would you mind also taking the seat? Oh, sorry. And the panelists were Abbas Kamuruddin and Lasita Devendra, Samira Chayawatan,
Mr. Roshan Rasul, I'm afraid he's not with us. He's unable to attend today. So I hand over Professor Ajit Madhurapper to continue with the panel session. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Swan. I think we are, the country is in like at crossroads, you know, because this digital transformation is coming up. It's affecting all spheres of our life, the new development, etc. I think it's a very timely initiative by the foundation to start working on a policy, how we can take this country forward. And I think Dinesh has outlined quite a lot of things that we should be looking at. And we have got a great panel, you know, from the industry, regulatory agencies, and academia as well. So let's hear from, because one of the things that Dinesh highlighted, and I think it's a very critical issue, is the capacity, and I've been working with Samira for a long time on this capacity building, and we have not been able to achieve our intended targets despite our good efforts, you know, and we are, like Dinesh said, that we are short of people, and the migration is aggravating the situation. Industry is short of people, industry is starving, and they are kind of, you know, even twisting our arms. I'm from the academia, and we get called, you know, say, okay, why don't you increase your intake to 40,000, 50,000 people so we can have enough people. So I know that Samira has been working on this capacity building. So Samira, can we have your take on what Dinesh presented and
Thank you, sir. So first of all, I would like to thank for inviting me for this occasion. I'll be speaking as a digital enthusiast or digital transformation practitioner rather than representing the organization. So I would like to first appreciate the fact that, Dinesh has mentioned a lot in terms of digital transformation, how it's going to affect the digital economy and the country's socio-economic development. He has done quite a bit of interesting work. I'll add a few more thoughts on top of it. Now, in terms of policy perspective, like even if you take Sri Lanka or some other countries, even similar economies across the region, one major blunder, I think most of the countries made, they don't realize what is digital transformation and what is digital economy and how it's going to sync up in nation's socio-economic development. So you take sometimes like e-government separately, digital transformation separately, and economy separately. As he clearly outlined, now even if you take like what is digital transformation in terms of what is transformation? Transformation is positive, rapid change towards future. That's what it says. So it's irreversible positive change. So how are we going to make that swift with digital? So that is digital transformation. But now digital transformation eventually change the ecosystem. Now if we take the digital economy, why we talk about digital economy? Eventually the digital transformation has contributed to the socio and economic development of nations. So that's the connectivity. So talking digital transformation separately won't help us, because it's all about how these dots are get connected. So if I may speak about digital economy, so end of the day we are focusing on digital economy. So that's the digital economy actually encompasses everything what you do in economic terms using digital in simple terms. So it can be ICT industry, innovations, products and services in one area. The other area is about how we're going to diffuse and adopt digital technologies effectively in efficiency improvement and making citizens digitally consumed, and so that they can also improve their livelihood. So in that terms, I believe one of the key things I would like to highlight, even though we tend to think every time like we are doing really bad, that's not the case in some areas. Not all areas at least, I would reiterate. So even if we take some other countries, now we have started our integrated digital, the ICT development initiatives in 2004. Before that we had this intake, but we haven't had an integrated nationwide development agenda. I think we started with Sri Lanka in 2004, which has some elements, integrated approach for a nationwide development, including the ecosystem, the infrastructure, legal and policy and everything. We have come a long way. I think what has happened as a practitioner, since I have also engaged in multiple capacities in different issues during last 10 to 15 years in ICT transformation area, as Dinesh also suggested, there are certain critical elements we need to focus. One thing, at the inception itself, we were too late. Singapore has started their first e-transformation agenda in 1970s. Korea has started in 1980s. We have started in 2003. That's fine, but still, you need to have a consolidated plan, nationwide agenda, which is focusing on the macro level end state. We had something till 2015. I'm not sure whether we had anything 2015 to date. Now, fortunately, I'm aware now there's something coming on, a digital economy strategy 2030. It's already drafted and it has to go to the cabinet, I think. We are hopeful at least we're going to have some sort of a nationwide integrated digital development policy and strategy so that everybody can contribute and ecosystem can work together towards a common vision. So that's one of the areas I just want to highlight. So I think that's one of the areas as a community, as maybe practitioners, researchers, like foundations like this can be significantly become maybe contributors in terms of pushing policymakers or the decision makers towards making those policies realistically adopted and implemented. Then let me highlight few more stuff on top of it, as Professor Dr. Madhurapperum also mentioned. There are certain areas specifically we can highlight. One thing, the lack of ownership. We tend to believe it has to be owned by somebody from the government. That's not the case. Even if you take the Singapore case or Malaysian case study, now they have divided their entire digital transformation agency and even their strategy is split into two areas. Say IDA Singapore divided into digital economy part and GovTech Singapore. Same thing happened in Malaysia also. Unfortunately, it's about 8 years back. Now, hopefully that's going to happen in Sri Lanka, but still, you have to have ecosystem-driven, the collaborative approach, so that everybody can take part of this journey. So one thing I would like to suggest, maybe Dinesh, how the ecosystem can take part in this national endeavor. Now in digital economy, everybody talks about digital economy now. Now in state is digital economy, that's why I'm talking about digital economy. So it has three areas. First area is the government, of course, that's fine. But then the most important element is the industry. Not only ICT industry, it's about how we're going to digitally capacitate the other industries. how are we going to make health industry, the SMEs, tourism in Sri Lanka, all the other industries will get affected. So that's how we're going to get them, engage with this agenda. So then, a couple of more points. One other point is about adoption and diffusion. I think you have already identified that. But that is one of the areas I think we need to focus more. Because still, we just completed a thing called District Digital Readiness Index with census and statistics. And we figured out everything concentrated again, Colombo, Kandy, and Goal in digital economy perspective. There are 23 parameters. So you need to diffuse technology. Not only regions, across all segments of the society. And also adoption. Diffuse means you're gonna, you're gonna make technologies go downstream. Adoption is how people gonna positively embrace digital technology and effectively consume that. So those are two other factors we need to consider, I think, when you move forward. Of course, that's part of digital inclusion also. In addition, few more things. With regards to the entity, the organization, I think there are few models, maybe Estonian one, Singapore one, and the Malaysian one. There are multiple case studies we can look at. But the important fact here is owning the strategy and policy. Despite of the government changes, we know in Sri Lanka it's very dynamic. We never know what's going to happen in next year or year after. That's the unfortunate reality. So what can we do? My suggestion is to make sure the strategy and the policy is being owned by all three pillars. Three pillars in the government, industry or the business, and citizens. Citizens can be represented by the respective entities. The industry is already part of the strategy and the policy in Sri Lanka, and the government has the total, policy ownership. Those are my 2 cents. I really appreciate the foundation and Dinesh for your and their hard work on this area. I think there are a lot more things to be done. As if I may answer maybe a couple of with 2-liners with Dr. Madhurapperuma's concern. Actually, we are also worried about these capabilities, because transformation happens. People tend to believe transformation happens in wires, networks, or systems. The rapid, positive, irreversible change happens in somebody's mind, not on wires. So the digital transformation, tech diffusion, or digital economy adoption has to be addressed with capability development, capacity building. So we need to take some significant measures, some reforms, serious reforms, in terms of making people rapidly upskill and reskill for us to face industry 5.0. That's the new digital economy, IR 5.0 technologies, all AI, data, and everything. So how are we going to upskill our citizens? I'll put that question and stop from there. Thank you.
I think Samira has to leave for some other event. Before you go, can I just get Samira to ask from your perspective? I think you brought up quite a lot of things. The inclusive policy, and how do we really go into practice? We have been talking about this. I was involved in 2003 when the Sri Lanka project came, and still we are talking about the same thing. So how do we maybe accelerate or actually implement?
Yes, sir. What I see, in my opinion, of course, with my understanding and being, studied some of the country case studies also, digital economy cannot be achieved alone by the government itself. The responsibilities from top to bottom, from the policy to implementation, has to be distributed. Even the accountabilities and the responsibilities with the industry, ecosystem, and the government. Actually, it should be driven by the industries, businesses, and the government. It's not like government is trying to pushing tourism sector to, start doing the transformation in the sector. It has to be other way around. So government should be the facilitator. Now, unfortunately, at this point, I mean, now there's a serious concern in terms of VAT and everything. Yesterday also Minister spoke about it. Industry has a huge concern on that, ICT industry and other industries. So those are the areas government has to clearly look at and facilitate to make sure they create a conducive environment. My good friend Abbas would be able to elaborate further maybe when he speaks. Make a conducive environment for the industry to take part and take the responsibility in developing the nation with digital economy, sir. So what we have done up to now, the total ownership and the accountability and the responsibility, everything parked with the government. It has to be distributed. I mean, if you're going to move forward, swiftly move forward, I'll take some numbers like 2021, the digital economy is 4.37% from the GDP. It's about 3.47 billion US dollars. So that's 4.37%, like 5%. Even if you take like similar economies in other countries, their digital economy represented 15% out of GDP. In good economies, so the top level economies, it's more than 30%, 40%. So we can leapfrog. This is one of the easiest areas we can tackle because we have resources, we have people, fortunately we have at least some sort of affordable access up to a good rate. So those are the areas we need to tackle together with the industry, the citizen, and we need to have a consolidated strategy and a mechanism. Industry can engage positively and they can take the, like maybe co-pilot seat with the government. So the government alone, I doubt whether government would be able to make this transformation happen swiftly.
Inclusivity of the society, bringing the society into policies. In your experience, what are the obstacles in? You talked about the government, the industry, and the citizen. So incorporating citizen into this policy body, what are the obstacles and challenges that you see? Because I'm asking you because I know that you have worked with the citizen.
Yes, sir. Since I have been I worked with almost all geographies in Sri Lanka. Now, one thing I see, even though we preach about citizen engagement all the time and grievance handling mechanisms and the participation portals and everything, so you need to have some sort of a solid mechanism which the communities are strengthened and their voices are being heard by the government. So I think that mechanism has to be created. Fortunately, we have created something called district digital transformation committees now, with affiliating with the Ministry of Public Admin and Home Affairs. But still, those are only structures. Again, it's the government bureaucracy. So maybe it's part of the adoption strategy or the diffusion strategy, Raja, tech diffusion strategy. You have to have a larger tech diffusion, the digital adoption strategy across Sri Lanka on digital economy, so that people are readily aware. It's not about digital literacy anymore. If you go to the other countries like Singapore or like Estonia or some other advanced economies, they talk about digital intelligence, digital literacy, digital citizenship, that's being a digitally capable society, then digital intelligence, that means digital savviness. So by default, you think digitally. How are we going to make this happen and use this by using digital technology? So that empowerment has to be done. Then only citizen would be able to take part the entire decision making and policy making and even the implementation process. One more minute on now with this generation gap, my observation is now for the recent engagements we had with all these youth, we engaged with about 14,000 during last year. I mean, face to face, I met about more than 10,000 for sure. They are really, really forward thinking. you don't have to teach them. I mean, if you go to social media, you see they are very proactive. I think future is much better than today, but still we need to make X generation and Y generation to be transformed. You need to have strategies employed for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Insights into from his point of view. So can I ask Asita to
Thank you, sir. We had a theoretical background to the digital transformation from Dinesh, which was very good. And he covered some of the most critical areas that we should focus on. Then Samira came up with this policy, which I think caught my eye, because Samira's main concerns is, do we have a policy? Do we have a national policy on IT or IT transformation? How do we create a policy? Then the policy has to dip down to the lowest rank. I would like to focus a practical aspect of this and especially take only 5 areas in my short presentation. One is about digitizing government. Now this is absolutely critical. Out of 650 odd government institutions, there are only about 200 have websites, proper websites, out of which about 30 have only interactive websites. So how do we digitize the country without the government having at least websites, institutions having websites, and the government services to the citizens and to the corporates to be taken digitally? So first effort is, let's get all, because people come from all over the place just to pay a bill. So first effort that we are going to talk about is how do we get the government to have a policy on digitizing all their government organizations and their services to the citizen. That's a very important area in this digitalization. So our policy, number one, is to ensure that government organizations have a good IT infrastructure ready for the public sector and the citizens. The second one, now in the same thing, land ministry must be digitized, the Indian revenue must be digitized, the import exports must be digitized. Therefore, the Indian revenues can be digitized. The government will make the entire network digitized. So citizens will automatically get used to the digital transformation. The second most important digitization that I think is important is digitization of personal information, citizens' information. Now, as a matter of fact, sir, at birth, we have a birth certificate which has a unique number. When you go to do your O-levels, you have another national student ID number, which is again unique. Then at the age of 18, you have a national identity card, which is a different number. Then when you get your driving license, you have another unique number. Then when you get into your passport, you have another number. So we have a series of numbers. At the end of the day, people can misuse all these numbers and it's never interconnected. So when you go to school, you have to fill up the same form again. Whereas you can have a policy on the number, just a policy saying at birth you get a number, and that is used when you go to school, that is used when you take your passport, when you take your driving license, when you take your up to death from birth, you can be. So that can be the number that can be used for your medical records, when you buy a car, when you buy anything else. So it's a simple process. It's not rocket science. It's something that we have to definitely do. That is to digitize the citizens' information. The third area that I would like to present is training of government and the citizens of digitization, which is absolutely important. I think Dinesh highlighted this about not being able to use the technology to go forward. I mean, we are not in an era where technology is expensive, and we have no time to waste. So how do we train these people, government, being an academic for about 25 years? I know the difficulty in teaching technology to the average person. So we must have a policy, national policy on how do we train government servants, 1.5 million government servants. Maybe all of them may not use digital technology, but majority of them, and then the citizens. So this is another policy. So I have highlighted that digitization, the government and the services is critically important. So we need to focus on that. That's, I think, highest priority. Then digitization of citizens' data. If you don't digitize the citizens' data, we are not going to go forward. Then of the training session. So this whole gamut would encompass the training session. Then the fourth one I would like to emphasize is the security of the data. Now, we're going to get a lot of data, and that information has to be highly protected. So we must have a policy on how do we protect digital data. Digital data protection is I think Dinesh also touched upon that. It was absolutely important to have a policy on digital data, protection of digital data, which is absolutely important for us to go forward. So that's another area that we should definitely focus on. And finally, we are exporting $1.7 billion of software, whereas India is talking about $300 billion. I mean, a country like ours, we can easily go up to $3 billion, which is a huge impact on the country. So we need to know how do we set up software development companies, BPOs, KPOs. The whole world is waiting for this type of technology. So my fifth area is how do we empower the IT sector to bring more revenue, dollar revenue, to the country, which we have to have a policy on. So if you can, initially if you can target on these five sectors which I just have emphasized on, I think the rest will fall in line. So digitization of the government services, the policy on that, and then implement it. Digitization of citizens and their information, and there is every bit of information that we can take from there. Then training, proper training. Today we don't have to do face-to-face training. We can always do a lot of online training, help people to get together, empower them to use digital technology to move forward. And then the security of data, which is again very important that we need to look at on a policy level, sir. And finally, how do we bring export revenue on digitization? How do we increase the 1.7 billion to initially 2.5 billion, maybe 5 billion? And see, there is no cost of that much cost of products except the cost of the capital cost. Digitization and export revenue can really help us to take this country forward, and we are really poised into that. So leaving those practical thoughts in your mind, I will give it back to sir to take it forward. If there's anything that you would like to ask, please do, and we will take it forward.
We will listen to Abbas, and then we will
Test. Right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Lasit, for the 5 areas that we should look at. I think this is same areas are going to come again and again, and I think we need to discuss how this transformation can really happen rather than just another policy document that will sit everywhere and distributed to everybody, but nothing happens, kind of a situation that we have. So let me give the floor to Abbas, who has been in the industry, and so bring the industry's viewpoint on this policy and how this transformation can take place. Because I think Samira brought up the issue that we have to integrate the industry, the state sector, as well as the citizen, and from the industry point of view, what is your take?
Thank you, Professor. A very warm welcome to all of you, and good afternoon to you all. So, on behalf of the industry, I've been representing the industry in various forums with regards to, we used to call it the ICT industry, but I think the word now is the digital industry, because the scope has drastically changed. ICT being more of solutions and software services oriented, as opposed to digital being a very much more varied scope. So on behalf of the ICT industry, what we have been seeing over the last few years is a drastic change in terms of the expectation from the industry. So to put some context also to what I think Dinesh presented in detail, Sri Lanka actually missed the bus when it came to the third industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution, or what we call the digital economy, is basically a great opportunity for us. But unfortunately, even with the fourth industrial revolution, or what we call digital economy, I think we missed the bus in some sense, because and I think industry is to blame for it as well, because we actually only touched on for so many years, except for maybe the last 5 to 6 years, for the last so many years, we have actually been looking at only one aspect of the digital economy, which is basically the ICT services, where we provide services for organizations that provide digital transformation to other countries. And frankly speaking, until maybe 5 to 6 years back, we really did not pay too much attention on how digital economy would transform our economy. And that's a huge gap that I think we left open, and I think our industry is to blame drastically for it. It was only maybe about 5 to 6 years back when we started shouting and making a noise saying that Sri Lanka needs to transform. Sri Lanka needs to adopt digital a lot faster, lot more. We heard from Samira that the Sri Lankan digital economy is only at 4.37%. I was talking very recently to MDEC in Malaysia, and they are at 36%. Their digital economy is 36% of their GDP. And what that means essentially is that 36% of their economy is highly productive, highly, the results are result-oriented, productive. It's giving outputs far beyond what a conventional economy would do. So that change has happened in most countries. Countries like Singapore, Malaysia, even Vietnam actually benefited from the third industrial revolution, and they got onto the bandwagon very fast with the digital economy as well. We did not. We actually focused a lot of our attention on seeing how we could only generate export earnings through services. And I think that was the fault of the industry. But today, I think the focus has changed a lot, and a lot of emphasis is on how we actually increase the digital economy, or how do we enhance the digital economy of Sri Lanka. So as an industry, I think we are very clear. We know what the strategy is, and I think we have identified as an industry 7 key areas or 7 key strategies or pillars, a lot of which has been discussed over the last couple of hours. I'll just briefly touch on them, but there is the last pillar which I think would be essential to get this digital economy moving. So just to give you an idea of the pillars, we talked about infrastructure. Infrastructure is vital to ensure that a digital economy can thrive. From connectivity, devices, and the various other infrastructure requirements, data centers, various other infrastructure requirements need to be in place in order to develop a strong digital economy. Human capital was discussed a lot. Human capital is two-pronged. As Dinesh mentioned, you've got the digital literacy amongst the common people, which has to be touched on, and the other aspect is ensuring that we have the correct resources to adopt digital. Those experts, right, level 1 experts, level 2 experts, from engineers to software engineers to infrastructure engineers, these requirements have to be there, right? And the third one was basically the usage of digital or the usage of internet, right? From digital payments to various other digital solutions. How do you ensure that you have enough applications, apps to basically increase the digital adoption or increase usage of digital? Integrated of digital technology within the corporate sector is absolutely critical as well. So I think that was also touched on a lot. I think Lasita touched on it as well a lot. So I'm not going to go into it, but that's something that industry has absolutely understood that needs to be driven. The awareness needs to be created, not only in Colombo, but in the regions. And there is a lot of things happening. Very recently, the industry had something called DigiGo in Gaul, where we wanted to see how showcase what are the digital adoption strategies for SMEs. So these things are happening to ensure that the digital adoption is there. One point that I'd like to touch on where Sri Lanka is really weak on is access to quality data. Big data analytics is non-existent in Sri Lanka because, frankly speaking, I think private sector is to blame as much as government is to blame. And we don't have any data sets whatsoever, frankly speaking, any up-to-date data sets whatsoever where we can do analytics on, where we can come to conclusions. And like Dinesh mentioned, a data-driven economy, we don't have the data in place to actually have a data-driven economy. That needs to be immediately put into place. And we are still one of the few countries that depends far too much on intuition when it comes to decision making as opposed to analytical data for decision making. And that needs to change if you're going to become a strong global contender as for any industry, right? Any industry needs data to be able to succeed. Digital public services, I think Lasita touched a lot on digital public services. I totally agree with him. We have been preaching digital public services. Thankfully, Samira is not here, but we've been preaching digital public services for many, many, many years. I think I remember Bangladesh coming down to Sri Lanka to understand our e-gov policy, and learning from it. They've gone and implemented most of it. We are still talking about it. So that needs to definitely change because I think we've set the infrastructure or set the strategy right, but implementation has not happened, and that needs to be corrected. And unfortunately, there is very little that industry can play in this space. All we can do is we can canvas and we can push government to do it, but of course there are limitations in that aspect of it. The last pillar or the last strategy that I would like to emphasize a lot more on is what I believe is to ensure digital economy to happen. There has to be a thriving digital entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? I believe that that's what's going to drive Sri Lanka forward. I'm glad to see that we are hitting $1.7 billion in export earning revenue, which is great. But the reality of it is we are hitting the ceiling. Why? Because we don't have enough. We are dependent heavily on the service business. Most of our business is coming from basically labor, where we provide labor to other countries to carry out various different digital initiatives, right? From developing software to various other things. Now we have a limitation on labor. We have only so many people coming out, and we are going to hit the ceiling in terms of, frankly speaking, we have a target of $5 billion US. There's no way we can achieve $5 billion US because we don't have the people for it. If we go as we are going right now. So the change that needs to happen, very frankly, is in order for us to get to $5 billion is we need to ensure that we have a lot of intellectual property being developed in Sri Lanka. Without intellectual property, there is no way that we can actually achieve $5 billion. So intellectual property requires a lot more effort, right? But it requires a lot, but the returns are far more on the long run. We have heard companies being sold out for $100 million, $200 million, $500 million because of the intellectual property. right? You don't see that happening in a service business. So I think in terms of digital entrepreneurship, there are a few key areas, right? And one other thing that I would like to see and what we are trying to drive is digital entrepreneurship is not just software companies or infrastructure companies, right? The biggest opportunities in digital entrepreneurship is we're talking about digitally born organizations. Organizations such as the Ubers, the Pick-me's, which revolutionize industries. They are not IT companies. They are transport companies. They are ride-hailing apps. They are maybe even, delivery apps or so many different apps. They are not IT companies, but they use digital to revolutionize industries. And I think there is a huge scope for that, and that is something that needs to be supported. Now, there is, for that you need to also have a thriving startup ecosystem. You need to have a lot of support coming in from government and various other entities, from funding, from investments to healthy policies, etc. So this needs to be put in place. We are canvassing, the industry is canvassing heavily in this space. I think all policymakers have understood the importance of this, but this digital entrepreneurship ecosystem is absolutely critical for this journey of digital transformation. So I think I've taken a lot of time, so I would stop there. There's a lot more to talk about, but let me stop there, and maybe we can go on to Q&A. Thank you so much.
Great, Abbas. A lot of thoughts for discussion. Now we heard Dinesh, you want to add anything to from the discussion that we took place? Anything else that you have to add?
No, I think basically the insights shared, basically I touched at a surface, but there were many insights that shared in depth basically with regard to some of the facets and the areas we need to dwell on. IP was another pertinent area I just touched at the surface, but it's a very, that's where we can really make revenue basically, and gains basically for Sri Lanka from a commercialization, having that productization mindset where we take it forward. And again, that the pertinent message to all of you all is, again, the underlining thread is IT sector should not be confined, because IT, ICT rather, is all pervasive. It's all digital across, right? Whatever sector you represent, basically it's travel, tourism, be it the retail sector, be it the healthcare, wherever you come from. So I think it's very pertinent that whatever you have as solutions or products out there, you should have that productization mindset, which will create you revenue gains from an organization perspective. Lasita dwelt on some of the specific application areas which we need to also look into at depth to kind of get this going from an implementation perspective. I think I want to just take it one step back. Let's start with email itself. How many public sector institutions use email for that matter? It's right. And how many times do you get responses, even if you drop a mail? How many bounce backs do you have on the emails, right? So day in and day out, we have this issue. And a lot of them, I mean, even looking at the public sector situation, we having the brand identity of .lk or basically the local .lk, but how many public servants are using Yahoo, Gmail, things like that, So, I mean, we need to start at that point. Then we need to graduate to the websites, providing the interactive web service, the services, basically digital services through the website with convenience in mind. Again, the citizen centricity is very key. We need to provide for that. And again, point well taken, we need to have that unique ID. There are many projects being spoken of, I think maybe a couple of years on, but I think nothing has realized yet. I think it's kind of a sense of frustration as well coming through that we observe, because I think we don't need to be classed as a NATO nation, basically talk only and no action kind of scenario. So we need to put these into live pragmatic action to have realizable outcomes for Sri Lanka, thus aiding in the growth and bolstering of our digital economy to the measures of the rest of developed nations. That's it.
Thanks, Dinesh. I think now we have listened to Samira was there, Lasita, Abbas, and Dinesh as well. I think quite a lot of issues have come up. I think we have been trying, Harsha knows that from 2003 we have been trying to do this, and still we are missing the bus. For some reason we are missing the bus. When the bus is there, we miss it. And we can't keep on missing this bus, we have to get into the bus somehow or other, Like Abbas said, IR 3.0 we missed it, IR 4.0 we are missing it, and we can't miss the bus again in 5.0 as well. So we have to somehow or other get into the bus, and I think in that sense, what this forum I think is a very valuable and timely thing. How can we get into the bus, and what we have to do to get into that darn bus, without missing it again. We have opportunities. I think it came up, the digital economy, how it can contribute to the national economy, which can be a big contribution. And also the nature of this is changing. Yesterday we had a meeting with the two ministers of technology and education. In that it came up, there was Ramesh was there, and he said that the Dialog Gas designed their annual calendar last year by paying 5 million rupees. I don't know whether this is confidential information, but that's the right thing. And this year, they spent $28 to get a subscription to a AI tool, and that is what it costed them, $28 from 5 million to and those opportunities are available. And I think our policy also should be what Abbas brought up, the entrepreneurship. How do we encourage this entrepreneurship, and how can we because it's a matter of adoption, the technology. And we know that there are Sri Lankan guys who have developed, world-class technology. One example is there's a team that got quite a considerable amount of investment where they can predict, using data and AI technology, whether you're going to get a heart attack in 6 months. And now they are in the US. I was in Singapore for 3 years, and one thing I saw was that the government invested in a testing environment. If somebody has an app, you can actually, if it's government, is kind of a app, you can get it tested by 10,000 people. Right? That creates that mass momentum. It can take off, okay, it might not take off also, but that's okay. That is the nature of this thing. So let me open the floor now. We have listened to several people, Dinesh Pepa as well. How do you think we can get into the bus? If you have any questions or even recommendations, yes. Can you get a mic? Please introduce yourself and so for the record.
I'm Dilhan Totevege. I'm an economist by profession. I do real estate business. I also prepare economic development plans, and I have been sending them to the government on a voluntary basis for the past 10 years. My recent plans have over 1,000 suggestions. Okay. Now I'll get to the question. I would like to know how is the online encyclopedia section, because I think governments can create online encyclopedias. For example, we can have an online tourism encyclopedia, and that would also support the export sector. Or we can have online law encyclopedia, which would improve the legal compliance in Sri Lanka, where someone can refer law. So I know some governments have some online encyclopedias. What would you have to say regarding the government creating online a series of online encyclopedias?
Can I take that question, sir?
Yeah.
Now, thank you, sir. Now, just to being a lecturer to the Ministry of Justice and to the judges, we find that none of these case laws are on the web. So the judge has to wait and go back to the books and read the book and come back and deliver a judgment. And now I'm right now involved in a legal case. It has taken about 20 years, and the judge is dependent on the information that is globally available on case studies, and they have absolutely no access to. So they go back to the library, the physical library, sir, and to collect information. So your question, sir, is very valid. It is definitely an important area that we should definitely touch upon. And these encyclopedias and wealth of information that the internet can give us can save us a lot of time. As a matter of fact, sir, these legal cases run into 20 odd years just because the land registry data is not available on the net. So they say, okay, go to the land registry, and they have no access of 20 years ago what happened. So they have to go back to the books, and they say, okay, we'll take 6 months to give you a report. So how do we run this country? So I'm only taking one instance, but it across the board in any of these areas, it's not that difficult. I'm sure Professor Madhura Perun was my teacher and my dean at Moratua. So 20 years ago, we were discussing about how do we make this digital information available to all the professionals. Very valid, sir. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
To what Lassie just said, yeah. I think this came up again and again, the lack of access to data. And yesterday, when we had this meeting, it came up, it's our cultural thing, We see data as a base for our power, If we share it, we dilute our power, so we keep the data. In fact, it came up, that there is a cultural thing, that is innate in us. So I think what several times Dinesh mentioned, this mindset change has to happen, and I think this has to come from, I think we should start from Montessori, right? Then at least in 10 years, 15 years, this mentality will change, that the power of data will be more if it is shared and if it is used properly, rather than having it. Yesterday the minister was saying that he wanted to know how many professors are retiring at the end of the year, and he has no way of knowing it. And nobody's either, they don't have the data or they are not willing to give the data. So in that sense, I think it's very pertinent that our policy looks at it as well, this sharing of data, giving access to the data on the need basis or through some mechanism. Access to data, I think, is going to be important, because now with these new AI tools, if you have the data, the decision making becomes so much easier, like what Lasit said. If we had for example, legal cases digitized, something that takes maybe 5 years could be done in maybe 1 day, 2 days, very easily. So I think whatever the policy that comes up, I think we should seriously look at of this, how we can give access to data, because so that is when the data-driven decision making can happen. Right now, like intuition or this is how it should develop. Our assumptions are the things that are driving our decisions. So that, I think, is something that has to go into the policy. Yeah.
Today, but the more observation than comment were out in 1978 when we opened the economy. We boasted that we are the first South Asian country to open the economy. Then we cited Singapore and said that the Singapore is transformed from a slum city to a world-class city through the open economy. Then we keep on, adding these countries, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, China, then the Vietnam, India, the latest is Bangladesh. So we say this is happening in Bangladesh, this country and all. We bring back and introduce the highways, seaports, airports, conference halls, lotus towers, all that has been happened. But the country remains, or country has poorer than the other way. So now digitalization is the latest. So digitalization, no one says digitalization is bad, but I would like to see how it is going to accelerate the growth, how it is going to restructure the exports, the development and all that. Otherwise, what will happen? It should not be an end by itself, it should be a means to an end. That is the go to the digital transformation, it should lead to the development. Otherwise, what will happen is, we have been building up a Christmas tree. We go somewhere, bring something and hang it there. So, I expect the digitalization would not be the latest thing hang on this Christmas tree. Thank you.
That is a very comment, but sorry?
Example came up so many times. So I have lived in Singapore for a very long time. So actually one major thing that we can learn from Singapore is forward-looking approach. Singapore's digital readiness started 20 years ago when SARS episode hit. I was at the National University of Singapore. They started every semester 1 week online. Those days there was nothing called online. But 1 week online, we had to, those days technology was not this sophisticated, but we had to put all our lectures, record in front of a camera and do it online. So digital readiness started early. So one thing that we can learn from Singapore is this forward-looking approach. Second thing I want to mention is that Lasita mentioned quite a very important thing about government services going digital, but the quality of the service is also very important. You know how poor quality some of these websites are. They don't get updated, If you want to get some updated information, it doesn't work. So the quality of the service is also very important.
Yes.
I really appreciate...
Sir, can you just put your name?
Right. My name is Ratnayaka. I'm a retired public servant. What's important is, I think I like what you said, but I heard this for last 20, 30 years. And also, I'm one of those failed people in public service. I was one of the persons who were trying to work in 2002 in the Treasury to bring up a new act to combine inland revenue, excise, and everything had gone very well. It was blocked by the trade unions, but later I found it was blocked by the senior officers of the finance ministry. The second one, I was running a company, the private government and private sector and government sponsored company on e-services Lanka Limited. I was chairman. We are trying to link the private sector, make them easy to do the custom transactions. Blocked by the my own friends. They said that these two are not compatible and therefore you can't get access to our data. The third one, I was trying to digitalize the registrar of companies. Failed because only system that we can procure at that time was the Singapore system or the New Zealand system. And you can't put a price to that. So there was a tender board. The tender board wanted to know what's the price, because if you suggest a price, they won't agree. I mean, for good reasons. This is not a tradable thing. It's between Singapore government and us, but the Singapore government says, we don't get involved. There's a company, you deal with the company. It failed. And the The last one is that I was Secretary of Trade and we were dealing with the US governments on various things on this. And I think, you see, there was a, sorry to say these things, there was a very effective commissioner of elections in India called Sheshan. And he had very difficult things to deal with the elections because politicians were influencing. What happened, I mean, he said, when somebody asked what were your difficulties, he said, manpower, muscle power, and political power. You have all three. These problems coming not from outside, it's within. So however much we try, unless we change the system inside, these things won't come. I mean, you see, you all know, when we want to do the identity card thing, we can't agree with the tender to buy a computer. It stops there. The customs thing, everybody, although people might say that we like this thing, but they don't like it because customs are known to them. In one category, there are about 8-9 numbers. There's one with 25 cents, the other one is 250 rupees. You put the 25 cents and collect the money from that man. There are about 8-9 papers. Right? You take it out and finish. If you computerize it, everybody will get to know what the real, if they can also cross-check whether it's the right cast date. The commissioner can look at it. Now you can't because it's in paper. So those are the difficulties. Inland Revenue has the same thing. If you, I mean, this is little bit confidential. If you go and try to look at your file, you don't find anything. You can find only your name. Big companies, maybe 250, 300 companies, they have those things. This is where the problem, right? I mean, we have the knowledge, but public service is a problem itself. You see, there was a recent, we were trying to get a bill to use, to get commonly used information, like health ministry, how many patients. I mean, it's very simple thing. There are so much of information we collected routinely. That to digitize, then you have something. I mean, you know, census department is doing one census, that is population and various other things. Others are samples. They are called sample service. That department is doing sample service once in 3 to 4 years. Sometimes once in 10 years. You see, we were working on the poverty. We guess that there may be about 30% of the population is poor. World Bank is giving one number, IMF is trying to do another, WFP is trying to say that people are dying, therefore give us food and that sort of thing. So these are, people are intelligent in this country. Obviously you can do it, you have enough manpower, you can train. I mean, let the government do away with some of these things and allow the private sector. What we need is people's type of pushing the government. You see, within you can't get the outside organizations to push for this and ask for the digital Sri Lanka, that might come. Because you see, unless you press, it's very difficult to get these things in. I mean, you can get a law, very good law, but then what will happen is, who is going to implement? Nobody is responsible now. Look at the, case in point is, look at the Ministry of Health. We never heard of these things. There's nothing, the business as usual. Okay. So I'm sorry, but it's very important. This is where we need to go. It's not a technical problem. It's a problem within, because this system favors a lot of other transactions to take place. If you go digital, that will be barred largely. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you brought up a very important point. I think Dinesh touched upon the culture of the country. So we have a huge culture problem that we need to address. And we also need to have a very strong policy and an implementation, top down. So if you have a good, strong policy, I'm sure we will be able to address this problem. Thank you, sir. Just a small request.
No, I think it's right. I think what came out, I think the implementation of this, it depends on, it's just like our road rules, no? Like we have a set of rules, but a three-wheeler can do anything and nothing happens. Not because we are lacking of laws, but they are not implemented, they are not enforced. I think digital thing also, I totally agree with you. It comes from within. I think that mindset change is one of the big things, and I think it has to come from the bottom, like you said, get the citizen empowered to push the government and the industry to adopt this, as well as come from the top to implement this. Otherwise it will never happen. I think that has to be considered when this policy is coming out, Mr. Lloyd.
So just to add on, yes, point taken, and also I think that collaborative approach and that ownership is very key. You don't isolate it and leave it to your point, sir, to address some of these concerns. That collaborative approach and that forceful assertive approach should be adopted and encouraged to ensure that all stakeholders, be it not only public sector, the relevant stakeholders from industry, businesses, all are part and parcel of that, so that they can be a lobby advocacy pressure group to make it happen, to overcome some of those bureaucracies which are yet prevalent in our public sector, sadly, which are deterring the move forward. So I think that should be ideally the approach, and I would like to, I think when I was invited also to give the sectoral view, my interest was more beyond the paper contribution. Can we use this as a platform, or the Gamini Korea Foundation, I don't know what the mandate is and what the purview and the restrictions are, can you look at it as the lobby enforcement group to lobby for policy advocacy and also even get involved in the implementation? Looking at that perspective, I don't know whether it is falling outside of the purview of the foundation, but to make it really happen, the impinging need is because like you said, sir, I've been in industries almost for 3 decades. It's frustrating. From day one, you've been hearing about very many policies, be it World Bank or very many policies which come, and nothing from a fulfillment angle or from what you look at what's out there, it has not been done. So to ensure at least, in our life, I don't know whether it can be realized in our lifetime, but at least at some point, basically that these are realized for Sri Lanka.
Sorry. I have one suggestion for the paper, sir. Yeah. So I'm Chaturanga Abhisingha. I'm a digital and data analytics consultant. So thank you for the paper, and I think it has covered all the areas that we need to look at. But stemming from the discussion, bus is still because we don't change the engine, right? So engine is corrupt. So every time we change another engine, which is equally bad. So my proposition is to your paper, now since that we want to push as citizens how to get it done, I think the measurements are missing. Now, for example, we were very clear that the government has to transform and the digital literacy of the people has to transform. So for that, we know how many preschools are there which has zero technology. We know how many schools are there which doesn't have computers. If as industry we start publishing it all across papers, newspapers, everywhere, then people will realize state is not doing anything, right? I think the Singapore, how they transformed in 2015, they brought in this digital readiness index, right, which measured all the industries in their country and put the number out. So if the government is not doing it, we can do it, right? We put it up, and that creates a pressure. Somebody is not working, or somebody is not taking responsibility. So I think for your paper, if you can add that, the metric that we need to follow in each of these areas, I think that also can be used as a tool if any government who wants to use, or citizens, we can use, okay, this is where we are, but we are not moving. So it's very clear rather than saying we are not moving. So that's one feedback I wanted to give. Thanks.
from everything else, I think it should be also citizen-driven. I think like that came up. Yeah, yes.
Okay. Right. Well, we had a treat, a good discussion. A lot of good ideas came out. And Dinesh, your paper is also very comprehensive. And it has motivated all of us to think. A lot of good ideas have come out. All the ramifications of digitalization are mentioned there. And at least I gained quite a lot listening to the presentations that were made. Unfortunately, time is running out. And that's bad for me because my main question that has been raised by Dinesh himself is something we have no time to discuss. He says establishing an authority, structure and reporting. That's very important, extremely important. And particularly since the government is keen on this whole question of digitalization, and the President himself has said that this is a challenge that we will have to meet, the government will have to meet. I would like to ask all of you, if you have the time, please, when you get back, you may not be able to spell out everything now. Write to us and let us know if one of you is appointed as the head of this authority, which will report to the President. How would you start? What are the things that you should do? What would be your plan? What would you tell the President? This is how we should proceed. There are lots of things to be done. We heard so much of all the ramifications. But the important thing is, and I of course fully agree that there should be a focal point, call it an authority or whatever it is, that will give vent to the President's desire also of making a digitalized economy. But you will have to say, how would you do this? There are lots of issues to be taken up. I mean, unfortunately we didn't have the time to listen to Dr. Ratnayak about poverty alleviation. Now, that's one of his key subjects. And I see the need for digitalization in that area. And here in Somalia, that's gone away. You see, but subnational planning, you see, which has to be linked to the overall national plan. So lots of issues come up. So what I would like to do is to give you time. Please write to us and let us know your views. And if one of you is appointed as the head of that authority, how would you proceed? What would you recommend to the President that should be done? Okay, thank you very much.
I am Shanta Das Gunratna representing Tilocris Global Solutions. Digitalization and sharing information across different platforms, different industries is very fine, as long as we use them with respect and discipline, which we do not have in this country. For example, you must have noted now how many emails do we receive which are not really solicited, how many messages we receive, how many calls we receive which are really not relevant for us. That means our informations are shared and sold to somebody for various reasons. So that discipline we should inculcate from the small days in our society.
I'm sure. Just a small question. Please make your questions very short because we are running out of time. Thank you.
This is not a question. This is just a comment for Dr. Loipandu. Saying that he asked us to pressurize the President. I'm Indrasri. I was in the government sector. Sorry. Okay. You know that. As Dr. Lloyd Pandu said, that we have to pressurize the President and the decision makers on how to do that, how to go ahead and like that. But I think there's no progress on that. I have seen over the last 3 decades that all these presidents, ministers, politicians respond to the request coming from public. But no one has, except few, no one has really responded to that. And I have seen that very recently in large organizations that they are really pressurizing the digitalization of all their services. But the problem is that these organizations are facing a lot of difficulties in financing, capacity building, the skills, other things. And then how can we go ahead? Now, for example, as we said that we'll pressurize on this with the social media and all. Now, how can we expect better results on the future? In the future, now they have added all these 18% VAT and also increased the prices by the private sector or the service providers. Then how can public works with the systems? Now, one thing that, as mentioned by one of the presenters, we need a very good information base. The problem is that the census department is the one who collects all this information related to the people and the housing sector in this country every 10 years. But right now, that 10 years has passed, and they are planning to have the next census into this year and the next year. The problem is that in 2001, when I was in the UDA, we have really worked with the census department, the director general and the staff of them. Why not you go to attach the enumerated form to the individual household levels using the GPS points which we have to collect over the years of time. Because 2001 to 2023, still the census department is not able to do that one, because they are not releasing the local level of information to the planners, other sectors to identify the respective areas where the inputs are necessary to enhance the public requirements and all. So why they are restricting the household level information to understand the party level? Because they don't like to give it, then the politicians can play, and they can identify all these people to give the Samurli or give Aswasmo, whatever the things, as they wish. If it is really collects the information and link to the spatial aspects of that, and then we know exactly the number of people of that households and what is their education levels, what is their occupation, what are the disability of that house, then straight away we can identify the number of people in the village or the Gramnila division. So then the DS division or the other people don't want to worry about go and find out the people, those who need the social benefits from the government. We can reduce. Similarly, the same thing happened on the agriculture, where the farmers, they claim the larger extent when it really affected by the floods or the droughts. When they try to pay the tax, they say they have a small plot of land. Right now, of course, the Agrarian Development Department is taking action to identify and map out the total extent of paddy area. Similarly, the other areas also can do that. Then, of course, we can prevent malpractices. And the bureaucrats are the other parts that they like to avoid, to have the better or good information base, because they can get bribes, pressurize the public to get their own amount of bribes. I know that the UDA is one good example. That right now, they are asking the millions of rupees to approve the bill. And we have to have the more powerful organization outside the government to pressurize the government. Like last time we discussed in the environment sector, where the government is now, the officers of the various departments are peered to that organization because they are taking.
Thank you very much. I think we are running out of time.
Okay.
Professor, thank you very much. So, in conclusion, today's session, I would like to thank Professor Ajit Maduraperuma and the panelists. And before we conclude our session, there are a few messages from the Gamini Korea Foundation. That is the next session. The session number 15 will be on education by Dr. Damaris Vikramasnayaka on January 5th, 2024. We would like to invite you to be present for that session. A lot of insight is going to be discussed, and there's going to be a lot of information that's coming out of it. And also we have an announcement. The Freedom Korea Award Ceremony 2023 will be held in February 2024. There's a small introductory video about this.
ලතාවක් දෙන කතාවක් ඔබ දිරෙන් දිලිදුකම පරදවූ කාන්තාවක් නම් කියන්න ඔබේ කතාව මොන ලොවටම ඇහෙන්න හමුවන්න කතා රචකයිනි මෙවැනි දිව්‍ය කතුන් හඳුනා ගන්න අභියෝග ජයගත් ඇගේ කතාව ලියන්න ඔබට ආරාධනා ක්‍රීඩා කොරියා සම්මාන උළෙලට ඔබත් සහභාගී වන්න හොඳම කතාවට ඔබ දෙපළටම වටිනා ත්‍යාග ගාමිණී කොරියා පදනමේ ව්‍යාපෘතියක් පිවිසෙන්න GaminiKoreaFoundation.lk.
Yeah, the Freedom Korea Award ceremony will honor inspiring women who have overcome poverty through family empowerment. And they will share their stories, and these will be awarded during this award ceremony. And going on, in order to conclude today's proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, roundtable discussion on issues papers on IT sector. To a close, it is my distinct honor and privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum and the Gamini Korea Foundation. First and foremost, we would like to express our deepest gratitude to our session chair, eminent speaker and panelist, Mr. Dinesh Satrughal Singh, who have shed light on the crucial matter discussed here today. Their insights have truly enriched our understanding and complex landscape of the sustainable digitalization and necessary reforms needed to keep abreast with the global requirements. I would also like to extend our warm appreciation to our session chair, Professor Ajit Maduraperuma, for expertly guiding the proceedings and ensuring that the smooth flow of our discussion is held. A big thank you is due to our esteemed panelists, Samira Jayawardena, Abbas Kamruddin, and Lasita Devendra, for sharing with us their years of industry experience and for engaging on a meaningful discourse. Your contributions have been instrumental in making this session both informative and thought-provoking. This event would not have been possible without the unwavering support of our chairman, deputy chairman, and CEO, and the directors of the Gamini Korea Foundation. Thank you, sir. A special note of appreciation goes out to the dedicated staff who worked tirelessly behind the scenes in ensuring that every detail of this evening event, was meticulously planned. Last but certainly not the least, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us. And we would like to wish you all a very good evening. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Thank you. Refreshments will be served outside. Thank you.